evening, everyone, and welcome to Talk Football. You're on with Dan and Jesse once again on Monday, bringing you another edition of our stats show. We were hoping to have a little bit more to bring you when it comes to Chelsea, but unfortunately, they've only done one deal as it stands so far, which is our man Raheem Sterling. So it gives us plenty to talk about, thankfully. Some information coming on around Nathan Ake we're going to bring a little bit later on. A couple of other names which are still heavily linked we're going to kind of take a look at and see how they fare up with the Chelsea players that they're replacing or the Chelsea players they're going to be competing with. So we just want to have a look at kind of what this business is doing. So with that, before we get going, Jesse, how are you, mate?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm really, really good. Thank you very much, yes. Been looking forward to it. Proper football is back on TV tomorrow, which I'm very pleased about. Finally, got some football back on now. Pre-season has begun officially. The teams are away in their respective countries, and it's all warm weather training or marketing opportunities, as some would call it. So with that, Jesse's going to jump up on the screen. We're going to talk about Raheem Sterling. Jesse, what do you make of this signing? Who's got the better end of the deal here, Man City or Chelsea?
I think it's good for both of them in their own ways. Obviously, Chelsea are in dire need of defenders and attackers. Raheem Sterling, proven, 4-time Premier League winner, I believe 4 times.
Yeah.
I think it's good. And he brings in the right sort of mentality. Not that Chelsea doesn't have success or hasn't had success, but league success is something that Tuchel needs. And I'm not sure if he's ever been the greatest league manager at Dortmund. I wouldn't say so. At PSG, I mean, it's pretty hard to miss out on that league, to be fair, to not win it. So I think bringing in Raheem is good. And he's, like I said, he's proven. He's going to be a massive addition to the squad, and they really needed a replacement for some of these attackers on that left-hand side. So
100%. I mean, the biggest thing that I'm impressed with, I suppose, is the price. I think £45 million, up to 50. It's a fantastic deal. It's a really reasonable price, especially when we're looking at some of the players on the market that are going in similar positions. Well, Raheem Sterling's 27 years of age, and he's got 3-4 years of playing the highest level of football. And he's a very, very good player. He's got his downsides, but he's also got a very positive side, which is, as you've said, he's a winner. He is a winner. He knows how to score goals, create goals. He can play different positions. He's been there. He's done it. He's got the T-shirt. So Chelsea, this is a really, really good piece of business, which stands out in a club which has failed to do any good business all transfer window so far. They've been really poor, which we're going to go on to later on in the show. So with that, Jesse, so what's the first thing we're going to be looking at here? How does he weigh up?
Well, the thing that I found interesting, obviously, was that his stats minus games played are actually pretty similar to Christian Pulisic, but you kind of see the difference. Obviously, Christian can't stay fit for 38 games a season, which is unfortunate. I'd love to see that. You know, he's my countryman, but
he's a very good player.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously Sterling is left-footed, Christian is right-footed, so there is a difference there. But I think it's going to be an upgrade on the other two we look at here. Obviously, as we go through these, we'll see a little bit of Hakim Ziyech is obviously a very different sort of player.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Werner, if you kind of start looking at shot accuracy, if you start looking at the actual conversion rate, the amount of shots, Christian Pulisic is much more similar to Raheem Sterling in all of those metrics. What I would say is the conversion rates here are telling.
Yeah, I mean, look at that, 14% in comparison to 28%. It's literally double. And in fairness, this is a player in Raheem Sterling who unfortunately isn't known as being the most prolific of finishers, in fairness to him. But it shows that he's, technically twice as prolific as Timo Werner is.
Yeah, exactly. And we start looking at assists. Obviously, Christian Pulisic and Raheem Sterling are much more creative. Playing in that City side, Sterling is a great source. I know that people talk a lot about his movement, which is very intelligent, and his late runs, back post runs, scoring goals from that position, especially in previous seasons.
Yeah.
But he also creates a lot. He creates a lot because he goes down the wing and cuts it back, which is obviously a staple of how Pep likes to play and score goals.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm interested to see how he lines up in this Chelsea side. And I'm still
I
not.
am as well. I'm very interested to see how he lines up because he's basically coming to replace somebody, isn't he? He's going to be first name on the sheet.
Yeah, but this is what concerns me is I'm still not convinced that I've said this before. We've spoken about this before. I'm not convinced Havertz is the guy.
No.
So I think that they need someone else there to take some, not the pressure off of Raheem Sterling, but the actual attention off of him when it comes to on the pitch. I'm I'm inclined to say he's there to replace Pulisic because obviously Pulisic can't stay fit, but I don't know how much this really improves them. If you know, I think it's a great signing. I think it does improve them markedly, but I'm not sure this improves them as much as people think it will.
I agree. They've lost the Lukaku. As much as the Lukaku wasn't really, effective as a player, he did score goals last season. He still did, not as many as anyone thought that he would. Raheem Sterling, for me, benefits massively. He's always played better when he plays with a proper number nine, whether it's Aguero or whether it's Kane. He's always benefited from somebody in the middle to cut that ball into. And Chelsea don't have that player. They don't have that player who will play in that position up front now, where they would. So I agree with you. Do I think that Raheem Sterling's going to be the difference between them finishing in top four and challenging for the title? No. Do I actually think that Raheem Sterling will win them more games? Perhaps, but I think we're only talking maybe one or two at the very most. I don't think this is going to be great leaps as a signing. And effectively, he's hard. If a puzzle had two pieces, for me, he feels like he's half the piece, and there's still another piece that's required for him to work really well and really influence games.
Yeah, I think missing out on Rafinha is massive, and it looks like that's going to happen at this point on Monday at 10 p.m. your time. It does look like that's official, and he's going to go to Barcelona. I don't see they need more threat because I don't think that this is going to be enough. I know people think that he might go in there and score 15 goals, assist 10, maybe. I just don't see him having a season like he's had 2-3 years ago for City. I don't want to be, I don't want to be a downer on
Yeah,
this.
I'm
It's a
not trying to be a negative nanny and Ellie, do you know what I mean? But you're right. I'm not convinced.
and I kind of
I'm not.
when I look at this, I know I said that the stats are more towards Pulisic, but I think I have that wrong. I'm looking at this, and he is a marked upgrade on Timo Werner for obvious reasons. I think anyone would say that. But if you think about their style of play, the only real difference is Timo Werner's right-footed,
Yeah.
and it looks a lot like they. I mean, the way that Timo's been employed mostly on the left, he hasn't really played the way that he was playing at Leipzig, mostly because he couldn't play that way for Leipzig. He can't play that way for Chelsea because you're coming up against low blocks. So
Yeah.
there is a lot more of that Raheem Sterling try to beat a man with pace and cut it back into the 6-yard box. But I think it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I think he's an upgrade, but they need more. So
Could you see Timo Werner potentially playing as the new number nine?
no, I just don't think it
Like
would.
being put in a more advanced role?
I don't think. I mean, do you really think that works?
Well, something's got to work, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like what's happening now doesn't work for Chelsea. It hasn't worked. They paid a lot of money for this player. They went hard. They went very hard to beat Liverpool to the sign, and Liverpool were very interested. And it's not worked out. It hasn't. There's no which way to look at it. He works hard, but he produces very, very little. And you kind of then get a question, well, which one are we going to do? Are you going to change it up? Because if you keep doing the same thing that doesn't work, then it's not going to work next season. We'll all be laughing again because it's not working again. So you maybe need to try something else because potentially if Timo Werner is able to somehow being given an opportunity to just get a plethora of chances, if he gets 5-6 chances a game, maybe he scores one, and then it would add up over the course of the season.
Yeah, I just don't think they have enough creative outlets to really do what they need to do. You can see if you hear that chances created isn't necessarily the best metric all the time. I'd prefer like big chances. But
Yes.
2.1 is bigger, greater than Sterling's 1.8. But I also, Ziyech's not purpose built for the Prem. I think that's become pretty clear. You need pace. You need to be a dog in the Premier League, and Ziyech is not that.
Yeah, it is again the Ziyech situation. Again, it looks right, but this was the old Chelsea. This was the old way of buying players because they look good rather than buying them for the actual team. You know, he looked good. He didn't work. The reason that no other team in the Premier League wanted Ziyech, actually wanted him, was probably because they realised that he wasn't hard enough. He wasn't tough enough. And that's why what has occurred. He's a great player when he's given the opportunity, but again, this is where stats can lie to you. You would sit there and say, "Well, Ziyech's the best player, isn't he?" Clearly, but he's not. When you watch him and what he does when he doesn't have the ball is also just as important as when he does have the ball.
Yeah, something that sticks out for me. This is atrocious.
Oh Lord,
crossing accuracy of less than 5%. You expect it to be low, but not that low. That's pretty. I mean, to be fair to him, he is crossing off of his weaker foot most of the time, but
4.35%. I mean, that's
there's almost no point. There's almost no point even crossing it. You might as well take a shot. You're better off taking a shot. Take on success. Yeah, Christian. I would assume I would have expected it to be over 50 for Christian. Same for Sterling, but I don't know there's no real drama there. Fowler's one. Christian does win a lot. He gets kicked a lot as well, but yeah,
he does. He's clever, and that's what. But I'm just looking at it now. I mean, listen, Liverpool. Sterling used to play for Liverpool. I've got no ill feeling against Raheem Sterling. I don't. He wanted to move on to different things. We were under a different regime at the time, under Brendan Rodgers. He had absolutely every right to move on to another club. And, I don't respect the way he did it, but I respect why he did it, if that makes sense. But for me, nothing's really changed for Raheem Sterling. He's still that same guy. He's still that same player that was there. He's just a few years older. I don't think that he's going to be the difference. I still feel that it's almost hamster wheeling. It's like, yep, great, got a good player. He is a good quality player. He's earning an awful lot of money. He's now one of their top earners in the club, which is interesting to say the least. As to how that fits, because if you're going to pay a player that much money, he is an absolute must starter, which means one of these guys isn't playing. More than likely Christian Pulisic, which is an absolute disgrace because he was bought for best part of 50 odd million pounds, wasn't
he? I think closer to 60.
Closer to 60.
Yeah,
closer to 60 million pounds, and he's not playing. So I remember having this conversation with you on our Discord, and we just talked about it and said, well, sell him then. If I was Christian Pulisic, I'd be saying I want to leave. There's no point in me being here when you're buying players in my position. I've been here long enough. I need to go and play somewhere else.
Yeah, I think I think that they could get a price for him. I'll be honest. I do think that they could get a price for him. I think that's been clear. I think they've had opportunity from Serie A and Bundesliga to offload Christian Pulisic. I think that it is the bully regime that's keeping him around for whatever reasons. I mean, maybe because they're American, but that seems cheap to me. That always seems cheap to me when you hear, because the owner's American, he wants to keep him because he's American. That doesn't.
I mean, it's almost disrespectful, isn't it? It'd be like Liverpool keeping Takumi Minamino. The first club that came in for a proper deal for Minamino, we sold him. But you could go, oh, well, what about, all the Japanese fans? It's the same principle with Pulisic, isn't it? Well, what about all the American fans and stuff like that? It's weak. It's such a weak situation to kind of, it's almost like a tokenism, isn't it? It's almost a tokenism to say, well, we're going to have Christian in because he's an American and he's our American kind of, marketing chip. It's like, no, I'm a human being who has his own aspirations and his own career that he wants to go on and do. He's won his Champions League medal at Chelsea. Fantastic. Right. I'm off somewhere else now. That would be me. If that was me, I would be saying, I've done what I need to do here now. Listen, I want to go.
Yeah. And I do think at the end of the day, he is a favorite of Thomas Tuchel. I think Christian Pulisic is actually appreciated by Tuchel.
Yes.
So I mean, the injuries are obviously an issue, but I don't think that. I mean, he's done a really good job for Tuchel in the past, regardless of the amount of time he's been able to play. So Werner, surprisingly, is the one looking to be offloaded to Juventus. They were trying to do that in some sort of a swap, not necessarily player plus cash, but a sale to Juventus that allowed them to also have that relationship to go get De Ligt, which is probably a good place to move on, actually.
Yeah, we'll jump across.
This is starting to get real meaty.
Listen, before we start, I'll give everyone my kind of thing, and Jesse can give his point of view. Matthias De Ligt is not worth the money that's being quoted. He's not.
No.
He just isn't. He's spent 2 seasons. We all sat here in 2019 and looked at Matthias De Ligt, and we all had this vision, didn't we? We saw this is a 19-year-old. Look how good he is right now. And because they're young, we iron out creases, which is their problems. We look at things they're not good at and just go, well, that's okay, because in a few years' time, he'll be better. He'll do better at that. He'll have improved, because everyone has this belief that a player will start at one point and end at a higher point and then eventually go down with age. That's not necessarily true, and it's very rare that always happens. Matthias De Ligt has gone off to Juventus for a really big sum of money. He's learned to defend from perhaps 2 of the best centre-backs currently available in the last decade in Bonucci and Chiellini. And these guys were probably expecting to go and have themselves a bit of an early retirement with Matthias coming in and allowing them to have a couple of rests. But it never happened. And it only happened when Bonucci who was injured for the season?
I think it was Chiellini.
Oh, Chiellini. Sorry, it was Chiellini. Yeah, Chiellini was injured for the season and De Ligt came in. I'm not convinced by this guy. I think he's a good defender, but that's as far as it goes right now. Good, not £90 million, €90 million, €80 million. Good, nowhere near that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it would be nice to have a little bit more in-depth analysis of what exactly it is that we don't appreciate about De Ligt. Not that he's a bad player or anything, but
no, he's not.
I had this conversation, and I'm going to get heat for this because I don't mean as a direct interpretation. It's not a direct correlation between the two, but Harry Maguire and De Ligt, there's really no point replacing Harry Maguire at United with De Ligt because they're both units, they're both big, they're both strong, but they both have the same sorts of weaknesses. They're not super mobile. They are good when the forward is receiving the ball and they're right behind them, right there, touch tight. But really, besides that, if you can turn and run at them, there's not much they can do. What else was I going to say about it? I would like to see how much ground covered they actually like, what their ground covered, what their heat maps actually look like. De Ligt might well work in a Juventus system, and that might translate to Chelsea, but he wouldn't work. He's not going to work in a Chelsea system that plays with a high line.
No.
Especially with 2 at the back. So, I mean, it's interesting, but 80 million euros?
It's too much.
I mean, it's just way too much. It's nonsensical. If Bayern
it's far too much.
If Bayern want to go in and pay 70, 75, 80 million euros for him, then good. I think Chelsea are dodging a bullet because he's not worth that much. And I mean, people will say Bayern has a good record of getting good players, obviously, as one of the biggest clubs in the world. I mean,
I hold the same energy, mate. I hold the same energy for what you've just said there. I hold the sentiment when it comes to he is too much and it is a dodge of a bullet. But I have the same opinion for Rafinha. He's a good player, very good player, but the prices being quoted for these players is too much. It's far, far too much for clubs to be overspending on players who, if we went back a decade ago, or even if we went back 5 years, they're nowhere near these valuations. Nowhere near. The inflation that's been pumped into football is outrageous, and it's completely unsustainable when players are going for the kind of money they are. Because if a Rafinha is 65 million euros, Lord knows what some other players are worth. God knows. Salah would be now with a 3-year contract. 250 million?
I mean, I'm not going to put a number.
200?
It certainly isn't helping the inflation in the market.
It doesn't help anybody, does it? It's ridiculous, you know what I mean? And I don't think he is worth that much, but I'm trying to point out the obvious point is it's ridiculous now. So, yeah, they've dodged a big bullet there. They've definitely dodged a bullet.
Well, I was going to say also that Upamecano and De Ligt, I'm not sure Bayern has a good record with signing defenders. Actually.
No, they don't. I was going to say they actually don't have a good record with centre backs. Upamecano was, he's not quite worked out, has he? And if Bayern gets him and he works out, good luck to him, fair play to them. But I watched Since I don't watch, I just saw the two, and they just don't read to me as the kind of players that I think would work so well. Whether they would be the right kind of signings. He's got a great name, and he's well known, and he carries a bit of weight. But I'm just not convinced. I'm genuinely not convinced. And this is interesting, is that for Chelsea, they're going in for two players, of which both of them are interesting. What's the word I'm looking for? What word I'm looking for? Both of them didn't actually want the club that wanted to buy them, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. You had Rafinha was dead set on Barcelona, and De Ligt was absolutely dead set now actually on going to Bayern. So you end up in a situation where you go for two players and you get zero.
Yeah, 100%. I also think that, I mean, the partnership there doesn't. I'm not convinced, and I'm. De Ligt is not what they need, but they need players that actually make sense to have in the team. I know that you've got some stuff going on in the background, by the way, but I'm not convinced that De Ligt is the right player. I'm not convinced that Rafinha. Actually, I have a different opinion on Rafinha. I really rate him 65 million pounds guaranteed. That might, I mean, it is kind of, it's definitely expensive and probably overpriced, but I think that deal makes more sense than anything like this deal does. I think, just going on to your point about kind of where they're looking in the market, Bully, and I've said this to you again, I think Bully's just looking at what other people are doing and saying, hey, I'll have some of that. And he's just perpetually missing out on targets. And it
looks quite amateur, doesn't it?
Well, it is amateur. This is a guy who is used to trades in American sports. Like, he's not looking at, he's kind of like, you remember Moneyball? I mean, I know you do, but Moneyball, he's kind of
religiously watch that film religiously.
I'm pretty sure at the Dodgers he has something like 6 or 7 players on the wage cap for the Major League Baseball, which just reminds me of like, hey, just go get the biggest hitter, the biggest name, the flashiest signing, and get him in. We'll trade, and it doesn't matter because there are wage caps in American sports, so you don't get screwed over. Lots of the money that goes into these players' pockets are sponsorship deals.
Yeah.
So American sports actually cap wage limits and then say, look, if your brand's big enough, you can make as much as you want because we're not going to cap your sponsorships. We don't care about that. But for player wages and deals, contracts, they do cap it at a certain point.
You see, it's interesting, isn't it? You say that because, I mean, I don't know anything about the Dodgers. I don't know anything about baseball. I know a limited amount. But as you said there, you've got a little bit more knowledge than I do when it comes to the idea that Bowling may have this sort of complex where he is quite simplistic in the way of signing, players. Oh, well, we'll just get the biggest one who does this, and it's not players for systems because obviously baseball is a very, very different sport. Same as the NBA, same as American football, same as the NHL, same as any of the American sports. They don't link into football. They're not even similar. You can't be one of those owners and expect to be able to just go, yeah, I know how to run this sports club now, because there's almost more complexity in it, isn't there?
Yeah, and I also think that the sports are just so different. I mean, baseball teams play anywhere around. Baseball fans will hate me for this because I don't know anything about baseball. I've been to games, I've watched them. They're great to go to because it's time to spend with your buddies and have a beer, get a pretzel or something. But I really don't watch much baseball. But I'm pretty sure they play like upwards of 100, 130 games a year. So a lot of the money.
Yeah, they do. We worked it out, didn't we?
Yeah, and I think that can get up to, like, if you make it to the World Series and play 7 games there and play lots of like best of sevens along the way. World Series it is the whole series. It is the final. A lot like the NBA final. It's not just one game, it's 7 games. I mean, that's 7 more games against the same team. And it's just imagine the match day revenue on those. You're playing.
I mean, it was about 150 games, wasn't it? We worked it out as if a team was to go on to win the World Series and has to then, play a deciding match in the 7th one, be nearly over 150 games. I mean, I watched Liverpool play 63 last season and almost died.
It was, man, isn't it? And these games are long too. These games, I mean, baseball games go on for like 3 hours. They can go pretty much infinitely if Well, you can if you don't finish it in 9 innings, it just keeps going until someone actually wins. I don't know what the longest one ever, but remember that tennis in the spirit of Wimbledon, we'll talk about it. There was a tennis match that went on for like 2 days. Basically, they had like have a like they had to have an intermission basically, and like, okay, we need these guys to go to sleep because this is getting ridiculous.
This is it. Come on, could someone win this match? Because we all want to go home here.
Yeah, exactly. But let's just go ahead and dig into this.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, but how does he? I mean, let's not pretend. I mean, Thiago Silva's just a beast, isn't he? You know, he's just a monster. Everyone knows this.
Yeah, you have to stick him in there though, because he is the benchmark for best defender in that Chelsea team, and not what they should be getting to. But
is it possible to put Ake in there?
Yeah, we can.
If that's not too.
Why did it just do that to me? It shows me Ake, and then it takes him away. I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, we'll get Ake in there. And I'd love to put Rudiger in there as well, just because these are the guys who we're going to be talking about, you know, because it's worth us looking at the ones who are leaving as well and what they're losing.
Yeah, I had it set up for the sides that they play on. But yeah,
oh, sorry, mate. Sorry, I didn't realise. Sorry, that's mine. Yeah, we'll go across that. Just put them on there. We won't talk too much about them, but we'll talk about the side there. We'll just have them in there. So yeah, Thiago Silva. I mean, ultimately the most important thing about him is he's not going to be able to play 32 matches next season. I just don't see. Plus FA Cup and Champions League. It's going to be too much for him.
I'm interested to see. Yeah, 32 games, but only 2,600 minutes played. That's not par for course. Or maybe it is. That sounds like too little to me.
No, it's right. No, 10 games.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, 90 minutes per game. Yeah, no, that's surprising that he even played that much last season. But I don't know. Like, he plays in a 3 as well. And he definitely played in lots of Champions League games. But he is just at that age where you can't depend on it. I think that's the important point.
You can't.
Yeah.
So we're going to have Thiago. Thiago's going to need Matthias. Someone's going to need to come in there to give him some form of a relief. So it's going to be a drop down anyway. But we're going to look and kind of say, well, it's more Christiansen now, and he's going to be replacing, really, isn't it? The next sign is going to be the understudy to Thiago Silva, the one who kind of comes in as a secondary option. And yeah, the numbers are good there, but Matthias de Ligt, I mean, it's great because he's going to be a long-term replacement as well. But there's nothing there that's making me jump out and say, oh, yeah, do you know what? This guy's the heir to the throne, do you know what I mean? Or he's not much of a drop down.
There are like certain things. Passes attempted just means Juventus had less of the ball than Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea had lots of games with 60% going on 70% possession. So that's to be expected, but it also tells me, I mean, he came from Ajax, so I don't think he'll have an issue adjusting to a position.
No issue.
But it does tell you that for the past couple of years, he hasn't been playing that way, which is something. Pass percentages, who really cares? Long ball accuracy, Thiago's just a beast, 10% more. I mean, that's a pretty massive 10%. Ground duel success, not that amazing. Aerial duel, Christensen's, he's a wet noodle, isn't he? So
he's
not. It's not anything surprising, but I mean, he's up there. But like I said about Maguire, if you put Maguire into this, he's going to be up there as well, maybe more. I mean, there was one season when I think Van Dijk was on 72 and Maguire was 71. That is what Maguire does. That's the only thing he does.
So, wins the ball
in the air. Yeah. So clearance is great, but I assume Juventus also defends more if they have less of the ball.
Yes.
So that still doesn't it's nothing shocking. Interceptions, I can kind of see that for Christensen. Blocks, I mean, they're just eclipsed by Thiago. I saw some insane defending from Thiago last season, so that doesn't surprise me. He got a red card or something. That doesn't really tell us all that much.
Yeah, not too much there. He doesn't show there, but I know Matthias de Ligt has actually been responsible for giving a number of penalties away as well at Juventus. This is something that was being brought up. If you're able to see like penalties conceded while we're doing on there, I just noticed that this is an interesting one, and this just gives us a little bit of a.
Why would you give us penalties won and not penalties conceded? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense to me. I'll keep looking.
Yeah, but as I say, when I had a look through when it was comes to like penalties conceded, it was an interesting one because he can be at times it's a little bit gangly and a little bit sort of loose with his defending, and that is something which it's I think it's just because of his build, because of the way he is, his arms can kind of dangle around and stuff like that, and with VAR you can't get away with this stuff now. You just can't get away with being like that. You have to be Johnny on the spot with your hands as well as your feet now.
Yeah, you do 100%. And yeah, I just want to check that out real quick. Take on success doesn't really tell us much. Christensen having 100%. I'm curious how much.
If he's only ever done one and he's won
exactly.
it,
which is like why, but like it's just lots of those like Victor Lindelof, Andreas Christensen, Rio Ferdinand back in the day. That's the sort of like that I was trying to think because that is an important.
Joel Matip.
That's what they do. Joel Matip, even Van Dijk, but
he's
Van
got 110% take on success, Matip, because he just keeps going.
Yeah, that's nonsense. Yeah, he does. Doesn't he? Doesn't he? Just gets.
No, he does. He's just like you think, oh, you're gonna pass now, and he's like he's in the 18-yard box. He just keeps going. He's like Forrest Gump.
Yeah, it's like Forrest. Why are you still running?
Yeah, say you need to sign. Stop.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, I think they're dodging a bullet here. I think that if Matthias de Ligt is the right name and you think he's the right profile, but I just don't see him being the right level quality player for a Chelsea team, who wants to be winning Premier Leagues and winning Champions Leagues. He's not going to be the man, if that makes sense. And I don't even think he would be close to who they need in the Premier League. I don't think it would suit him at all.
Yeah, I don't see it, to be honest. So, no, I think it's interesting, but that's where, let's see, Ake.
Here we go.
Feel like we feel pretty similarly about this one. This one looks like it's close and it's probably going to be done. I don't know if I've heard some interesting things. Ake is a clear no to me. I know that they need personnel, but it's just like, why would you go for that instead of someone else? I know they're going after de Ligt, possibly Koundé. We don't really know what's happening with that. It's been pretty quiet.
Well, that was a deal that was done before the window opened, from what I was led to believe, and here we are.
But then people are saying, well, it's not a Tuchel signing. That was a club signing, and then they removed everyone, and now they're going after Ake. I don't know about Ake. He's a good player, but is he what Chelsea needs? I doubt it. He's fourth choice at City, which I know they have good center backs. He is versatile, which is definitely a bonus. I like that about him. Played 14 games. Of those 14 games, 920 minutes, really. He's a good player, but I don't know if he's of the standard, because what Chelsea want to be doing is competing for the Premier League, and he's not that level.
It was funny. Ake was the player at Bournemouth who stood out. He stood out at Bournemouth, and it was a case of City, I believe, like just farmed him and just went, "Yep, we'll take him." He's young, talented. It's a good business deal, and it turned out for them that it was. They've had 3 or 4 years of this fella, and he's won Premier Leagues and all the rest of it, but he's not kicked on, and they've now quite happily allowed him to go to who is effectively a rival in their own league, and that's something you should be worried about. For me, I think that's something you should be worried about.
I don't know, as a Chelsea fan or as a City fan?
Well, as a Chelsea fan, to be able to just sit there and go, well, why are they letting us have this guy? Why are they so happy? I mean, the same with Sterling. I mean, the Sterling situation is a little bit different on the basis of, well, we can't convince him to stay. We've bought players to replace him. 45 million. Do we want to sit here and lose him next season for free? He'll be 28 years of age, leave on a free, and that just would be embarrassing. Is it worth we just they're here? He's agreed personal terms. He's on 300 grand a week. We can't argue. Right, let's get the deal done. So that's that side. But with Ake, I'm so underconvinced by this guy. I really am. I don't think he's anywhere near the standard of a. He played for City, but did he really play for City? You know what I mean? Like he was a reserve.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything that makes me convinced he can be starting for Chelsea in a 2 which rumor has it they're going to be going to a 2. In a 3, I guess that's fine. As left back cover, to be fair, they need it at left back. Emerson Palmieri, I never thought he was a bad player. I think he's a good player, but I don't know what they're doing with him. I don't know if he's already left. I don't know if he's just came back and he's just sitting there. I think that this is sensible in the fact that he's versatile, but it's not long term. And I think that we kind of had this conversation earlier where there's not a whole lot of value in the market. So it's interesting because there's not a whole lot of value in the market, but Koundé and Pau Torres and even probably De Ligt are, well, no, not value for De Ligt, but like Pau Torres is a way better option.
Yeah. I mean, no one's touching this guy, which is surprise. Well, it doesn't surprise me because I know that you're a fan of him and I'm not. You know,
I'm not really a fan of him. I just think he's
but like you rate him more than I do. Do you understand what I mean? You rate him more than me. I don't think he was that great, to be honest. And you know, it kind of maybe it goes to show that clubs aren't making moves for him at the moment. When we're aware of his €50 million release clause, it's nothing really any different for Nathan Ake. It's practically the same price for a player who's played first team football, Champions League football, all season. Would, for me, represent a better deal, but Chelsea have gone with Ake, and I'm not convinced. I think Chelsea fans will defend him because he's going to be a Chelsea player potentially, and they'll convince themselves that he's better than he is. But I think next season we're going to hear a lot of Ake done this, and he did, because when Liverpool played numerous occasions, I watched Ake because he was a player everyone was told to look out for. Ake this, Ake that, he's going to do this, and numerous times I was like, what are people talking about? I just didn't see it.
Yeah, the hype has been pretty outrageous, especially when he was at Bournemouth. I know United were looking at him for 40 million, and I think it's only been like 2 or 3 seasons, by the way, but because I know it was under Ollie. I was like 40 million pounds for this kid. No way. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if Pau Torres ends up at City. So we'll see if that. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to happen. I'm saying it. There was some reports, and I wouldn't be surprised. I had a point, but I completely forgot. You have something?
No. I'll buy some time. See what you can think on that one. Yeah, it is. Like, I mean, they've lost Rudiger. I mean, that's the biggest crime in all this. Christensen, I don't think anyone cares. Like, I wouldn't care. Like, he was okay for a season or so under Frank Lampard, I think. And then he just wasn't. He got too many injuries and he was weak. And with Rudiger, but allowing Antonio Rudiger, he was a man out of favour, but then came back into favour. And as soon as he came back into favour, why were they not nailing this guy down? Why didn't they nail him down and get a deal on the table, but they just let him go for free? Oh, but people will say, well, what about Ukraine? What was stopping them before it happened? Nothing.
Well, you hit both of my points on the head. I had 2 ideas, which was first about the Rudiger. Whatever way you look at this, whether it's De Ligt up for some reason playing on the left-hand side, if it's Nathan Ake, if it's Pau Torres, if it's Koundé, if it's anyone on the market, they're all massive downgrades on Antonio Rudiger is the fact. Like, there's no winning there. And then the other thing, and I thought this was an interesting idea, and I think that there's some merit to it. Tuchel has done very well with defenders. So maybe that is something that Chelsea fans can look forward to and say, okay, he might have these issues or be unproven as a starting center back on the left for one of the top 4 sides, teams wanting to compete for the league. But the fact is, Tuchel has a very good record at Chelsea specifically of getting the most out of defenders. Now, that is something I can get on board with. That's probably the only thing I can get on board with.
No, I totally agree. And going back to the Ake situation, the Nathan Ake transfer actually reminded an awful lot of when City bought Rodwell, that they saw somebody who was outstanding within their team, and they're quite happy to make those gambles. And I think that this has just ended the same way. Ultimately, the difference being is that they've not sold him until later on in his career, where he's been able to kind of just be quite happy to play as the fourth fiddle at the end of the day. I think he's been quite happy not to really be involved too much, to be honest. But he's gone to Chelsea. It's a big task ahead of him, to be honest with you, because there's no hiding. Like, this is highest level. There's no, making mistakes. There's no losing to lower teams down that league. They need to be week in, week out winning games, and that's my concern. I'm not convinced, to be totally honest with you, that this is a good signing. If he was 25 million, I'd say yeah, great as as an option, squad option. I'd be agreeing. But when you're paying this kind of money, he's a first team player. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I do think that there's something to be said when you have the wall of Pep Guardiola to hide behind, where he can pretty much do no wrong within the City fan base, except for the Champions League, basically. And the criticism is actually very low, because if you get selected for a game, you don't get criticized as much because Pep is the one who selected you. So you have that, you have the 5 degrees of separation, 7 degrees of separation, whatever it is, between you and criticism when you play for City, opposed to a Chelsea, where if you're a starting center back for Chelsea, you are going to get pelters. If you're
going to tear to shreds.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think there's that. Let's just quickly go through these stats. The only real interesting one to me was, there's long pass accuracy. Again, that's somewhat surprising to me that it's so low being a City player, but that could happen for any reason. Aerial duel success. We were talking about this and we've talked about it before. So just to preface this with, we're looking at Lisandro Martinez. He has a similar aerial success to what Nathan Ake does. I'm not convinced that these are contested aerial duels, because half the time the player, like City players contesting aerial balls, are just defenders kicking it out from their 18-yard box, and they're really playing as a sweeper. This isn't like a cross coming into the box or a 50-50 with a number 9 and the center back on like a goal kick. This is like someone just cleared the ball and they have literally 30 yards between them and the nearest opponent.
Win a header.
Yeah, like, and by the way, Ake had pretty good aerial dual success at Bournemouth, so I might be talking out my ASS. But
it goes to show he's not standout, is he? There's nothing that stands out there at all.
No, not really. Clearances, interceptions, blocks. I mean, he's playing for City, so he's not going to get as many. Yeah, I mean, they have the ball 80% of the time. So, pass accuracy, I mean, that doesn't even really matter. Long ball accuracy, like, there's just nothing. There's no meat on the bone for me to be inspired by, whether it's eye test, intuition, or within the statistics. So,
yeah, I'm not convinced that this signing is going to work out at all, to be honest with you. That's just my gut feeling. I think he'll go down as a squad option, and then we'll hear defence from Chelsea fans. But I don't think he'll be that great, to be honest. I really don't see it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. You want to move on to Koundé? I mean, this is the issue. So we didn't add in Rafinha because Rafinha is going to Barcelona 99%. Sure, that would have been very interesting to me. But just going over it, I think they needed more on that side than they needed on the left. So just real quick, I just want to mention that, because I mean, I don't want to dig too deep into Chelsea fans' hearts anyways, because there's no point saying.
Yeah, we're really throwing the dig in, but like Chelsea fans, I'll say to you, me and Jesse, when the takeover occurred, we have a number of Discord calls with a group of us and stuff like that, and we both heard the same sort of conversation is that all the good news was coming out in the news. Oh, there's 200 million to spend, blah blah blah. It's going to be this, it's going to be that, and we was like, listen, until it happens, don't listen to it. Like, they're always going to say this stuff. It's like, how's the 200 million going to be available? And when initially I praised a little bit of Todd Bowley when he decided that, I'm going to get rid of this team under Roman, which makes sense because he needs to, because you don't need the ghosts of the past hanging around. United have unfortunately suffered from having the ghosts of the past hanging around their club when you don't need them. You just need to, thanks very much, and there's the door. Sit in the stands, but we don't want you involved in the club's running in any way, shape, or form. So I praised that. But my concern is I actually thought he would be potentially at least getting some form of advice, or at least having somebody as a consultant, to kind of, guide him through these deals. And Bowley recently, he's been jet-setting around there with his big old paper stackers thing, going to Barcelona and doing all this stuff. Like, some of the links that we've got confirmed They tried to sniper the deal for Richarlison. I mean, that would be a laughable deal, to be honest with you. Rafinha was a sniper deal. They came in and just went, right, there you go. How much do you want? 65 million. Okay, we'll pay that. For a player who was dead set on going to another club, which was going to cause them a headache. You know, I could have told you that. Todd Bowley could have rang me and said, hi, Dan, what do you think about Rafinha? And I said, yeah, he's a good player. I think the price is a bit rich. But I said, have you considered the fact that even if you do try and make a deal, he's dead set on going to Barcelona? I mean, dead set. I can tell you that. I don't even know the guy. He will go there. I think he'd play there for 20 grand a week. I really do. I think he'd go there just because it's like playing at your dream club. So the Ake situation, I'm going to praise him for Sterling. I think that is good business. I agree. That is good business. Not hard business, especially when you're paying such high wages. The Ake, I mean, that's easy business because ultimately I think City are happy to let him go. You know, it's not a big deal to them. You're not prizing away Laporte or Diaz from them. You're getting their fourth choice centre back. So I'm not going to give too many pelters for that. But when I talk about, like, for example, De Ligt, again, this was just like a name. He's just a name. There's nothing about that. It's almost a very Chelsea signing, to be honest. We're going for De Ligt. All right. Why? Because he sounds good.
Absolutely no reason, no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, De Ligt, there might be something there, but just looking at it as the fans we are, the non-professionals we are, I mean, it seems clear as day that that's a stupid transfer to go after to me. So 80 million,
absolutely no sense.
80 million. I don't care if they have 200 million. 80 million euros is way too expensive for a player like De Ligt, and not because he's not going to be an amazing player in the future and he's just had a couple rough years. There are no 80 million euro defenders in the market right now.
Nope.
There's not one. If they were on the market, it would be Koulibaly. I mean, even Van Dijk. I would say Van Dijk, if he were on the market somehow, miraculously, he's worth 80 million pounds. Like, there aren't defenders that are worth that much. It just doesn't exist.
And this is where we get into this conversation, don't we? We talk about this conversation when it comes to valuations of players, and we talk about, you know, I know there's multiple different facets to, you know, how a valuation comes to it, you know, how long the contract's left, blah, 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 wages, da. But if we're talking Ake's worth £40 million, well, Konate's worth double.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, if we're going to be as basic as that, if we're going to be as basic as saying, well,
100%.
You know, Konate is twice the player Ake is. He is.
It also depends on what you need. Chelsea,
yeah, exactly.
So much. That's not an excuse to say, oh, so we're going to overpay for one player. In fact, it means that you need to be much more intelligent about the way you spend, not going out and paying 80 million euros. If the fact that Liverpool paid 100 million euros for Darwin Nunez this summer, or whatever, going up to that, is something that
I bet the whole deal, 100 million euros.
I would criticize if it wasn't like Liverpool need to fill one position, so they spend 100 million euros. I don't really care. It's like, oh, so you got your player, so you got the person that Klopp wants and that the club wants, and you're going to proceed and try to build a legacy there. It's different when you're going for De Ligt for 80 million euros and you still need two attackers, so Sterling and Rafinha or whoever that may be, and another defender. It unbalances everything. So it's different in every situation, really. But
and there's no talk of movement out of the club either, which I think is, you know, I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of discuss the whole situation. So, Jess, you know, like, you know, around the club. Take us back to full screen, mate, if you wouldn't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we'll go back to full screen. You see, like, this is the thing. There's a number of players who are currently on the pay slip as it stands still now at Chelsea, and there's no discussion right now or any news of them leaving the club. I mean, Ross Barkley, what's he being paid for? Nothing. He's being paid to do nothing. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, what's he being paid for? Nothing.
Cho.
Cho. What's he being paid for? Nothing. These players are, you know, they're not getting rid of that dead wood. They're just going to hang around the club. You know, simply put, they're just hanging around the club. You know, Conor Gallagher's here now, right? For me, Ross Barkley's literally on the market for any price. Even if he goes to free, I'd be like, there you go. Just find a new club. Yeah, I don't need you.
Yeah.
Leave. Just leave. And you're not hearing any of this stuff. Like, you want someone to come in there and say, Thomas, who do you need in this team and who do you not need? And I want to hear some names. Who do I not need? Well, I don't need these players. Right. Well, okay, then I'm going to go and tell them right now and tell their agent to go and find themselves a new club. Because, I don't need people hanging around here earning wages that they're not needing. And that's bad. That's really, really bad, because it's just players who are just there. They just exist. It's clear that Tuchel doesn't trust them. Kepa. What's Kepa still hanging around for? He's a sellable asset. Surely there's a club out there who needs a goalkeeper, at least to Kepa's ability. As much as we all kind of give him this and that, and he's not, he's still a good goalkeeper. He's a good goalkeeper.
He's okay. Yeah,
he's good. I think he's good. There's excellent, great, and I think he's good. I think he's mid-level. They massively overpaid for him because, again, they saw he was young, and Liverpool had just bought Alisson, and we've got to then beat you to the next expensive goalkeeper and all the rest of it. And we can go over Chelsea's poor transfers for aeon eternity. They've had some very bad ones, and Kepa's just a long list of them.
Sorry, no, you can take a loss on Kepa. I just wanted to so he's on £155,000 a week. I guess you could get someone to pay that, but that's a lot. Sorry for interrupting you, Dan. But
even if you take a reduction, Jim, within the actual, I don't know, in some way taking some form of reduction, but it's maybe not so much the money. 155. It's not an incredibly high wage, to be honest, for a goalkeeper. It's doable. But what could be more important is does he want more for himself than being a second choice goalkeeper at Chelsea? I'm sure he does. If it was me, I would say to him, come on, you're a young goalkeeper with your career still ahead of you. Why is it that you don't want to be second choice? Let's get you sold. And if it means he ends up going for 15 million or something like that, or 18 million pounds, so that the wages can be accommodated for, then bonus. There's no point having a second choice goalkeeper who's Kepa Arrizabalaga, because I'm sure they can find somebody on a free transfer who'll come for 40 grand a week.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I do think that 155 is a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
But I think that you can eat that and just say, okay, we're going to sell you for 20 million and we'll pay like a certain amount of your wages, or just get him on a loan. I think he was on a ridiculously long contract at one point, but just do something to supplement it. I don't know what you do, but you add on, if he's going to go and be on 100K a week somewhere else, then add that onto the contract and just get rid, or reduce it from the fee, whatever it is. So.
Find some way around it. But yeah, there's numerous players across that club, who need to be moved along. There's players that need to be brought in. I believe they still need another midfielder, at least. Conor Gallagher's had a great season at Crystal Palace. I think he's going to be, a good quality player next season. However, do I think that they're going to trust him? No, I don't think they will. Kante is looking like he's a little bit leggy now when it comes to playing. The fact that he was being linked to Arsenal was quite funny.
I saw that. That was interesting.
It was like going back to the idea that, he's Kante's a name. It's like, yeah, but have you watched Kante recently? Have you watched him?
Good player, but it's the end of that rope, isn't it? He's getting there to that age. He's a certain kind of player, and those players never last as long as we would like them to. It's a 10-year thing. That's it.
Yeah, they get to the end of their careers much quicker than others.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing will be to see. I would actually offload a lot of those players that are more established. So obviously, like your Chos, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, what's his face, whatever, it doesn't matter, and then bring in some of the more young players, because they're at risk of losing players like Colwell and some of their more young players, and keeping around these players who are a little bit more established but are never going to make it at Chelsea. Yeah. So they might as well just get rid of them now.
Yeah, that's it. I agree. It's like pulling that plaster off at the end of the day, pulling that thing and going, let's see what's going on. Because if we sat here now, we've got the Chelsea team in front of us, and we went through the players who keep and sell, I think there's going to be more. Well, at least a higher percentage of players in the sell list than any other club. I'm looking at them and saying, Timo Werner, keep or sell, sell. Yep. Christian Pulisic, keep or sell, sell.
Yeah.
Hakim Ziyech, sell. I don't even need to say the keep side, sell. Going through to players like Jorginho, I don't know. I think they were going to sell him at one point, but
you can replace him. If you can get like De Jong, then yeah. I mean, like, I hate to say it. Well, who else do they have? They need a little bit more depth than that, but there are players out there who can replace Jorginho for the next 10 years, especially. Like,
yeah, exactly. There is players out there who can come in and do that. There's numerous players. There's at least 7 or 8 players in that team who are either on the first team or on the bench who shouldn't be there. They're not good enough, or they're not working. And I know that can't all be done in one season. Of course, it can't. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. But I would like to have seen some action towards getting rid of some of them. Well, I know Lukaku was an easy deal because it was like, we need to get rid of this guy, and they did. But that's not where you cut the line on it and go, well, that's fine. Well, we've got rid of Lukaku. It's like, yeah, but we need to look at trying to get rid of a couple of other ones if they're not good enough.
Well, it gets interesting too, because even if we go further back through their defense, Sarr, I would sell him right now. I would just get rid of him. I mean, it was a free transfer. It doesn't hurt you. Get 10 million pounds or whatever, 15 million.
Yep.
Chalobah, I've done my eye test. The glorious eye test that is always correct, right? Everyone knows that their eye test is elite. He's never going to be good enough to take Chelsea to where they need to be. He's not that level. We all have players like that in our academies that come to our first team. Palmieri needs to go. Who is even their backup right back? It was Aspi, right?
Well, so, the backup right back was it's James and Azpilicueta.
Yeah, that's gone.
Well, wants to go.
I
think
going. Yeah, he's definitely going. I think they're going to honor his wishes, and Barcelona is more than happy to take on him and Alonso. Somehow Alonso is going to get his move to Barcelona. I mean, like, Godspeed, because they're not going to pay you. So whatever your wages.
Oh yeah, they don't be relying on them wages.
They don't. Their checks tend to bounce. Let's just say that. Like, so.
This is it. They're like the mate who owes you some money, and they always said, "I'll pay you next week," and that's kind of what Barca are going to be. I'm interested. I don't know what they see in Azpilicueta and Alonso, to be honest, but they see something in them clearly, and we'll all be surprised next season.
Aspi's a legend. Alonso is the one where I'm just like staggered. I'm just, how does this guy? I mean, he's handsome. He must like. He's up there. He's an 8 or 9 out of 10 for sure. So maybe that's how he gets his.
That's what he's got. That's how he sells them shirts, doesn't he? That's what it's all about.
But besides,
they're only bringing good-looking guys in at the moment. That's what Barca's transfer plan is. We've cracked it. But I've really enjoyed this evening's stream. I think it's been an interesting one. It's given us a little opportunity to try not to bash Chelsea too much, but we're just trying to give our opinion of, like, the current kind of ownership situation going on, where we're not overly impressed with the way things have kind of gone along. And if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be quite frustrated. I wouldn't be worried, but I'd be frustrated at the very least, because they're in a top 4 battle now.
Yeah, that's sorry. Yeah, and obviously I don't want to interrupt you again, but I think it's interesting. The excuse of, oh, well, it's a new regime. They definitely have that, but so is United, a new regime. I know we didn't get a takeover, but I mean, Ten Hag came in and saw what was happening and ripped up the transfer list. They were saying, hey, these are the players we think you should get. And he went no to all of these except for Nunez. Nunez was the only one that was on the list, and they couldn't get that done. You got to move on at some point. And right now it looks way too scattergun. It looks like Todd Bowley's just jetting around Europe. And basically he's watching Twitter and he's going, oh, United going for De Jong. Sweet. Well, Barca like Rafinha. They've been looking at him for 6 months. Cool. Like, it's just nonsense at this point. So, I mean, even Lewandowski, like, can Chelsea realistically get Lewandowski? If they look at him, if that's the player they want.
No, and that will be the hat trick. That will be the hat trick. If they went for Lewandowski, he'll do exactly the same thing and go, I don't want to go there.
But I never wanted to go. Yeah,
I
like
want to go to Barcelona. Why is no one listening to me? I feel sorry for him. I genuinely feel sorry for him because he's literally going out in interviews and he's using all of his agents to tell all the big journalists to say he only wants Barcelona. And then there's a news report. Oh, he could be going to Chelsea. I'm like, no, he's not. He ain't going.
I do think sometimes, and this isn't a direct shot at Chelsea, and we'll have this conversation later once a transfer window ends. But the fact is, I think these Champions Leagues and these FA Cups aren't so good for a fan base like Chelsea, because I don't think people are viewing Chelsea in the same way they're viewing themselves right now. You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want about United. Oh, so what time for Anthony to hop in the stream?
It's coming with me giving them full pelters. Yeah, like I agree. I mean, Chelsea's been a bit of a wounded animal for a few years now. It's turned into a Liverpool 05 sort of success levels. They won a Champions League and an FA Cup. You know, that's genuinely where you are. That's what Rafa Benitez won with Liverpool. He won an FA Cup and a Champions League. And that's where Chelsea are right now. I'm afraid, they're nowhere near winning a title. I don't think. I don't believe they'll be anywhere near winning it this season. Hello, everyone who's just joined for the 4 people squad. Really appreciate you jumping on. They're not going to get to that point, and I think that's where Chelsea are right now. They've got a much better team that beguiles that kind of situation. They've spent more than enough money to get them to that point. But I'm not quite sure as to what can change. I think this is going to take years. I genuinely do. I think it's going to be years and years before they're going to be able to look at going towards the top of the table again.
Yeah, I think it's going to be rough. But I also think it's a reset. It's a reset that's needed, and it has been. Yeah, and I mean, Anthony, it's like it's not even bashing. It's not that people are trying to belittle the club. It's just looking at the prospect and what's going on at this moment in time, and the fact that these deals are falling through, and it just doesn't make much sense to go ahead and say, well, we are where we were a year and a half ago. That Champions League, I know that you guys definitely deserved it, but it just kind of came out of nowhere. It was not expected by anyone. And I think there needs to be
and that's where I come from with the Liverpool aspect.
It didn't come about because of proper planning. It came about because you brought in Tuchel and he just struck gold with the right players, set up the right system, and did really well. Did what you pay him to do. It wasn't a Liverpool thing where it was steady progression up to a point where it was sustainable. So I've had my opinions on Abramovich leaving. I think it was about time. I think that era of just spending frivolously, and without aim.
It was the authoritarian side of it, though, wasn't it? It was that I'm going to sign the players that I want. We've had years of that. I mean, we could get all of Chelsea's transfers together in one big old list and go through who's a hit and who's a miss. And there was a lot of misses in there. A lot of misses. There were some very big hits, but there's some really big losses when it comes to it, kind of thing. So, yeah, I think that idea of having this kind of autocrat, authoritarian owner, who's like, I'm the boss, I'm the person who buys the players. If I like Fernando Torres, well, I'm buying Fernando Torres. What's that you're saying? His hamstrings are shot and he isn't worth 50 million. I'm not interested. I'm buying Fernando Torres. Because when I was only a kid when Torres went to Chelsea, and even I went, wow, 50 million, he's finished.
Well, that was the thing. I think that the method of spending worked a lot better in the noughties, for sure. I mean, it just did, because it was authentic. It was novel at that time. Abramovich leaving was the best thing that ever happened to us. I think that it was just very good timing, is what I would say. I think after the growing pains go away in a year or two here, you guys will be golden. So,
yeah, definitely. Once to get the right people involved, but that's what Bowley will need to do going forward. He's going to need to make sure he gets the right team in place, because I think he's realised, or at least I hope he realises, that he ain't good at this. He may be a billionaire, but he ain't good at this job. This isn't something that he's going to make any money out of. And he's going to end up causing himself big headaches if he does end up going to the other end. If he does end up kind of like saying, well, I can do this, he needs to get the right people in and just say, right, I'm stepping back. You guys run the club. That's what matters. By the
Well,
way, boys, what do you think about Rafinha? I think Chelsea are calling Barcelona's bluff. In one way, Anthony, I mean, I'm convinced that you weren't going to get this player as long as Barca could afford the asking price. Because Rafinha's always ever wanted Barcelona, simple as that. He was going to apply a lot of pressure. The player, I say, is going to apply a lot of pressure to Leeds to accept a deal from Barcelona more so than one from Chelsea, because this is his dream move. This is his dream opportunity. Do I think that Barcelona have got a magic money pit from somewhere, which they have? Because I don't know how they're affording all these players unless they're getting them on a pay weekly system.
yeah, it doesn't really. I don't think they're not putting in an official bid. That's because of the structure, but they're also offering more. What do you think? As an Englishman, what's the translation for the conversion from 75 million euros to pounds? What do you
It's
think?
14%. So as it stands now, it's 14% less. So you take off 7, and
Yeah.
you take off another 3 million. Yeah, so it's going to be about 10 million less, something in and around that number. £60 million, which is the asking price of what Leeds wanted.
The one thing I would say is that they can't really put an official bid until they have the money for him. So there's talk about the levers being pulled this week, and the Frankie De Jong thing is obviously coming to a head. Whether or not United get him, it's gonna be. I think United pull out of the Frankie De Jong deal. That's the word on, from reliable people. If we don't get it done by Friday, but I'm done with predictions on Frankie De Jong because it's fucking nonsense at this point. I think that there's a lot. I think that they have a verbal agreement, same as you guys do, and the official bid will go in when they.
Yeah, I mean the verbal agreement
I
is
don't know.
it's. I think the idea is it's kind of, you make that verbal agreement, they can't really then go back on it. If you've said that we're going to offer this money, that's acting in good faith. All of a sudden, like, oh yeah, well Chelsea have gone now, so it's 50 million. That won't fly. That won't happen. If I mean, to be honest with you, Barcelona have been pretty adamant in this situation that they wanted this player, to be fair. I thought they'd have cooled their interest, but because they've now made this verbal agreement, they are serious. Clearly, they're serious about this deal. So, from a Liverpool fan's point of view, I would pull out of this deal immediately. I would just stop wasting my time and go and look at somebody else.
Yeah, I would do something similar. Barcelona are a train wreck this summer. It's not worth doing deals with them unless it's something that you absolutely need to get done. Any deal they're involved with, get out. Get out now, because it's just not worth wasting your entire summer. I know I'm saying that as a United fan with the De Jong thing. If it weren't De Jong, if it were anyone else and it wasn't the situation where he's their only sellable asset and Ten Hag is adamant that he wants him, there's just no reason. I'm totally happy, by the way. I was having this conversation with Dan last night. I think you might have actually been in the Discord while we were talking about Anthony. I'm actually happy with Neves and Eriksson next summer or next season as a pair in midfield. I'm totally okay with that. As far as the Frankie thing goes, I think if you get Frankie, you leave one position really weak. So you get Frankie, but then you still have McTominay or Fred as the other midfielder. I don't think that. I actually think we'd be stronger next season without Frankie, but I'm gonna stick with Ten Hag's preference. But that's the only deal that makes sense with Barcelona because they have to. There's no way they can't. Like,
Definitely. And just one more before we come to wrap up. The new rumours, Gnabry. Gnabry's going nowhere. I'll say this now. I'll tell everybody, Gnabry's staying where he is. This is all about getting a better deal out of Bayern Munich. It's as simple as that. He just wants a better deal out of Bayern Munich. He's not leaving. I don't think he'll come back to the Premier League. In my opinion, I think he's just looking to get a better deal. There was situations. Arsenal were linked to him. Liverpool were linked to him. Manchester United have been linked to Gnabry. He's been put round, and any player who's been stuck round the rumour mill is one of two things: either his agents feeding information to try and cause more issues when it comes to getting a better deal, or it's made up. As simple as that. Like, there's only two things to it. Either it's just made up and they're putting going, oh, he's only got 1 year on his deal. Yeah, Chelsea might need him. Look, it's Gnabry's a great player, but I don't see it.
that would be an incredible deal. But he was doing the same thing to Arsenal earlier in the summer, basically saying when they ask him, would you consider going back to Arsenal? He's like, I wouldn't rule it out. And then the fan base goes ballistic, and the entire media goes, there's nothing in that at all. So it's all fan led for the most part. Probably. But I think he'd be great for Chelsea, and I would be envious if you guys got him. That'd be a great signing.
No, 100%. But Brill, yeah, well, listen, everyone, thank you very much for obviously tuning in and coming and watching. We really appreciate your time. Anyone who's coming watching this as a pre-recorded, thank you so much for kind of coming across the video and just spending your time watching it. We're going to be doing a show tomorrow, kind of a bit of a match reaction a couple of hours later after the Liverpool versus United pre-season friendly. Just a bit of premise on that one. We're not going to be sitting here kind of digging into the result. We're not really bothered about that. This is about us discussing players, formation, individual performances, and just to get a feel for, Ten Hag's side of the system. Are Liverpool going to play a different system? How will the United players get on with Ten Hag? Will we see this? Will we see that? And that's what we're going to be looking at. So we're going to be doing a bit of a breakdown of that. What's impressed us? What doesn't impress us? And kind of give our views. So I hope you can join us again for tomorrow for that one. Back again Wednesday with a transferred show. Got a few more kind of done deals. Hopefully we'll be able to give you and give those situations. A little bit slower so far this week when it comes to the bigger deals. So we're going to maybe digging into some clubs further down the Premier League pyramid who have been a little bit more busy. But of course, it's silly season. Anything can happen. In the time I've been talking, there could have been something on Twitter. So I don't know. But listen, thank you very much, everyone. If you're going to put a like on the video for us, it really does. It's really important to us. If you can subscribe, that would be great. Thank you. And hit the notification bell for whenever we make any more videos. But until next time, thank you very much for watching and see you later. Bye-bye.
Cheers.